Okay, I think we have 43 participants, and Catherine, I'll let you take over. Everybody, welcome to the panel on LGBTQ protagonists in science fiction and fantasy.
Okay. Well, hi there, everyone. So I'm going to ask that if you're in the audience and you have questions, to go ahead and put them in the chat, and we'll get to them later on. And I'm going to kick things off by asking the panelists to introduce themselves. I'm going to keep this kind of casual and chatty because it's one of the early panels of the convention, and we're all probably either getting off work or half asleep. So I'm going to start there. So Gail, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us what your favorite LGBTQ protagonist that you have written is and why?
Oh, gosh, that's really hard because I love all the babies. Hi, I'm Gail Carriger, and I think I'm gonna go with my fan favorite, which is Lord Akaldama, who is my very gay, very flaming vampire character who's based loosely on Oscar Wilde, and who does in fact sparkle because he is dripping with diamonds. Thank you very much.
All right, excellent choice. We'll just go with Bob next because that's how the circle works on my gallery view.
Okay. Hey, I'm Bob Angell, science fiction, whatever writer. And my favorite gay character comes from my novel that was published last year called Best Game Ever. Ooh, I suppose I should do this, right? And then, yeah, and actually it's the main character, Robbie Papanaugh. He's definitely a Kinsey 6, but I think one of my favorite characters in the book sort of became Miles, who is the non-binary, and yeah, I just love them because they just sort of took over and created a life for themselves that just, like you said, sparkles. They're very into fashion.
Sparkles are good.
Sparkles are good. Hello, glitter.
All right, Kelly, what do you got?
Hi, I'm Kelly Robson. I'm a science fiction writer or science fiction, fantasy, and horror, mostly short fiction writer from Toronto. I think my favorite character would be a street burlesque dancer by the name of Cass from my story Skin City. So like Gail and Bob's characters, also very flashy, also loves to dress up, also loves to put on a big costume and put on a big show. And I think one of the reasons why I love her so much is she believes in true love. And I really like that in a character.
All right. And I'm Catherine Lundoff, and I'm a writer and editor and publisher from Minneapolis. I run Queen of Swords Press, which is a small, mostly queer genre fiction publisher. And I'm gonna do my favorite just because I can. So my favorite my character is from my novel Silver Moon, because I'm wrapping up book 2, so I've spent a lot of time with these characters. And her name is Becca Thornton, and she is a bisexual menopausal werewolf. And the first novel, she spends dealing with a lot of stuff about coming out at middle age, turning into a werewolf, you know, building community, all that good stuff. And book 2 continues the story of, you know, what happens to her and the rest of the werewolf pack. And, you know, like a couple of other people mentioned, a lot of my other work is short fiction. So when you don't spend quite as much time with a character, you get a different version of favorite. But in this case, it's like, all right, Becca. So that's my fave. Okay, so I'm gonna go around again, and this time we'll do it backwards. And why don't you tell us about your favorite protagonist, your favorite queer protagonist who's created by somebody else? It can be any medium you want. Doesn't have to be books, comics, movies, TV, whatever you want to do. And we'll start with you, Kelly.
Gosh, there's so many.
It can be your favorite today. It doesn't have to be
my
your favorite
today. It's like every character ever written by Sarah Pinsker. How's that? Does that work?
Sure.
Gosh, I've been steeping myself in K-drama lately, and so there is a character in the drama called My Mister, which is one of my absolute favorites, and it's very this world. It is not speculative at all, but the script is just fantastic. Very slow burn and very, very good. The main character in that is absolutely gay, but it is never fully, like, it's never said on screen that he's gay, but he is. He just is. It's obvious. And it's obvious that there's a backstory with his best friend who ended up becoming a monk. And, I can't remember his name right now. I'm working on my memorizing of Korean names, but I can usually just remember the ones of the K-dramas that I'm currently watching.
So,
but he definitely would be
quick second.
my favorite.
So for audience members who might not know, can you explain very quickly what a K-drama is?
Oh, sorry. Yes, it's K-drama is Korean TV.
Thank you.
So this particular show, My Mister, is on Netflix, and you may or may not like it, depending on how much tolerance you have for a story that moves slow but is very tense. And so that would be my favorite. And I like how the main character's life is absolutely affected by the fact that he is gay, but it is never delineated. It's really quite interesting, really cool, and very, very deft. Very neat. Yeah.
Cool. All right, Bob, what do you got?
Well, I don't remember the character's name, but I absolutely adored him. And he was Bob Smith's character, and the novel was Remembrance of Things I Forgot, which was a time travel novel, which I don't know if it got a whole lot of press, but it came out, I don't know, last decade or so. And basically this kid who's he's an artist, and he's in love with this physicist, and he's finally found the guy, this physicist, and all of a sudden he goes and finds out his lover has disappeared, and then he kind of goes hunting for him, and he gets up in this room, and it turns out that Dick Cheney is a time traveler, and they're chasing him through time, and it's just this hysterical romp. And he's clueless, he's fun, he's like, just kind of like all over the place. He's just a great character, and just lots of angst and lots of drama. So and you just have to, he's just adorable, so you just have to adore him. So crazy book, a lot of fun.
Okay, so what do you got for us, Gail?
So rather like my own sexuality, I'm refusing to pick one. So my first queer and sci-fi fantasy was Vaniel in Mercedes Lackey's Magic's Promise series. So I have to give a shout out to that, because he will live eternal in my youthful discovery of, like, oh, you can do that in sci-fi. It was a very exciting moment for me. And then Xena and Gabrielle, of course, because that will age me, but they were the first I saw on screen that I remembered very clearly. And then, like Kelly, I'm gonna pick a right now one too, and that is No in Lovesick, which is a Thai drama. I will see your K-dramas and raise you for Thai dramas, because that's my preference. And you can find Lovesick on, the first season is streaming on Netflix right now, and then the second season is also available on YouTube. I think the first season is too. But Noah is just like he's a very excellent representation of bisexual self-discovery. And he's just this it's basically a YA series. And he's just so floppy and confused and overreactive, and he doesn't know what's going on. And I just love watching him deal with feelings for another boy and not knowing what to do. And it's very adorable. So he's one of my
fantastic.
It's such a good series. Lovesick, 2 words. yeah, I mean, there's other couples and other stuff going on, but it's totally adorable. I highly recommend it.
Cool. Well, most days it's Dark Willow, but apart from that, if we go for formative, I would go with Melissa Scott's Trouble from her cyberpunk novel, Trouble and Her Friends, which I read back when it first came out. It was like, oh, you can do this tool stuff with computers. This is so great. And be gay and do crimes. So that was kind of a really formative thing for me. So that she remains one of my all-time favorites, and she's part of a hacker community, and it's really well done, and it's a great book to revisit. So if you're looking to check out some cyberpunk classics, I would definitely put that one on the list. So do you think that having favorite characters influences you in any way? Does it influence your writing? Does it influence what you look for as a reader? Is there anything about the kind of characteristics that you would apply to your favorite characters that you would then apply to your own creativity? And any one of you can start.
Yeah, I mean, I think we often write the things that we like, right? And that intrigue us. And the things that we like and intrigue us are the things that become our favorites. So yeah, I would say absolutely.
I think sorry, go ahead, Bob.
Okay. Well, it's a little bit like, finding a template. You have something someone you love and something you like, and you kind of look at the progression of a story based on that. But for me, it's people. I take the characters and bits and pieces of people that I run into that seem to like come together, and they form their own thing and just kind of take off. So yes and no.
I was gonna say for me, it was a huge part of permission in a way. So I think Mercedes Lackey was so formative because I was at the right age when I transitioned from children's books, because there wasn't young adult when I was young, into adult reading. And I did that via Mercedes Lackey because she had pretty books with girls and horses on the cover. And I was like, okay, I'm down. I'm 11 years old. This is clearly for me. And she just had queer characters in her books. They were always there. And it was this, and I didn't even register it at the time. I just absorbed it because that's what you do when you're 11 years old. And so when it came time for me to start spitting it back out again, I was like, well, if you write science fiction and fantasy, you have queer characters in your books, because obviously, what else would you do? Why would you not? So it was permission, but also normalization. It was just like, well, that's the way it is. Moving on.
Isn't that funny? As she doesn't really get much credit for that, does she?
Because she's a female author writing about girls and horses, maybe.
Yeah, but those books were like you say, they were formative. They were huge,
especially for women writers of our age bracket. I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually pitched, the first time I met her, I nearly fell over, and in fact, I might have actually fallen over. But a friend and I basically just pigeonholed her and fed her champagne and told her how she changed all of our lives because of that. Because I don't think she's told that often enough.
Aww.
Yeah, I think some of that had to do with some of the narrative choices of things that happen in the Magic Spawn series.
Yes,
because
yes.
I know within queer community conventions circles, there's kind of like that again. And it wasn't that it wasn't groundbreaking, but
thing that goes, unfortunately.
Once you get into the red shirting, that you kind of get a certain amount of drop off there, regardless of how that came about or why that was included and what happened afterwards. Because and that certainly was not unique to those books, but it was definitely a part of I think how that series is perceived now, especially among younger readers if they're familiar with it. So yeah, no, I definitely think that these are some really good points. And I think that, in addition to permission, I mean, I think it's also, it's inspiration. I mean, if you're sitting there and you're looking at what somebody else has done and you're a writer we are all at heart at least somewhat competitive, or we wouldn't be doing this. There's a point where you're looking at it and going, wow, I wonder if I can do that too. Can I do a version of that maybe I like a little better, or maybe I like a little differently, or maybe I react to in this different way. And you kind of measure against that to some extent, maybe not even consciously, but I think that that's also a part of establishing your favorites when you're reading other creators' work. So
yeah, I think about other people's work when I'm trying to pull off certain effects.
mm-hmm.
Like, this is an effect that they pulled off really well. Can I do that too?
Right.
Hmm.
What do you think, Bob? You look like you're about to say something.
Well, I was kind of going back to your idea about, do you draw from other queer characters? And, oddly enough, I mean, maybe when I was a lot younger, I would read things, and some of the characters, if I really, really liked them, they would just be queer. And
you would retcon it. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Like, for instance, I was 15 when I read Dune. And so me and Paul had this thing, Paul Atreides. So, and I just, kind of always remember him. And I loved how, his growth, the whole growth arc that that Herbert did through the novel, from kid, just kind of like this, innocent kid going over to this Messiah kind of thing, and just all the different things that he went through, and the growth spurts, and just the things that he learned from, and the betrayals that taught him so many great lessons. And I think that informed a lot of the writing that I like to do. So, and plus I like my gay characters to always just be gay. I like to have just in the writing, in the story, I mean, gay is completely normal. And back in the 80s and 90s when I was writing back then, that was a different kind of thing than it is now. But that was really important to me too. So.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
and representation has certainly changed a lot, which has really been. I was on a panel for Multiverse last weekend, and we're pre-recording things, and everybody on the panel was like decades younger than I am. And so I'm like, so it's all like Charmed now, isn't it? You just walk into a place and you smile at somebody cute and suddenly you're together, right? You don't have all that angst and stuff that happens beforehand and questioning and all of that, right?
Well, yeah, that makes me think of Lois McMaster Bujold's Beta, the planet where his mother is from, where Miles's
Mm-hmm.
mother is from, where everybody, their sexuality and their availability is I think did they wear it in earrings or something?
They were earrings, yeah.
It's right out front. This is what
Mm-hmm.
I am. This is everything about me sexually. It's very upfront. Doesn't that sound kind of idyllic? I mean, I don't know.
It's amazing, and especially if you came out I came out in 1986, and it was a very different world.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
89.
So Gail, did you want to talk a little bit about inspiration? And then
I mean, where do I get? I mean, I pull from my friends, mostly when they're drunk because I write comedy.
Note to self.
No, right, exactly.
I'm just like, okay, here's a bottle of red wine. Let's talk. So I mean, I grew up as a kid in San Francisco in the 80s. So and my dad is a beat poet, so basically surrounded by queer people all the time. I thought it was the norm. I still assume everybody is pan until I'm proved otherwise. Like, I go into every interaction just being like, whatever you're interested in, and may impact me, might not, don't really care. It's not gonna at my age, not gonna have too much of a profound impact on my life. But yeah, and then I like to say I go in assuming everyone's queer, and then I'm disappointed constantly. But yeah, I get it from friends and family, and I don't pull as much from other authors. I don't think, perhaps a little bit from television and stuff, but mostly from real life. And then historical, like I said, like Oscar Wilde or the Scarlet Pimpernel. There are historical characters that very much interest me, and I retcon them as gay often. My character Alexia, who's bisexual, was very influenced by Amelia B. Edwards, who's an Egyptologist from the Victorian era who went gallivanting around the Nile with a female companion, and I was like, well, I've decided you're gay.
Oh my gosh, what is her name?
Amelia B. Edwards. She wrote the book 1,000 Miles Up the Nile, which basically started which caused the Victorian crazed obsession with Egyptology, and then caused destruction in Egypt. And then she became one of the first preservationists that what we have on around who she was. She then spent the rest of her life basically campaigning for people to stop destroying artifacts. But yeah, she's an amazing, amazing character.
Was she the
History is
inspiration
filled with amazing.
for?
She's
I
the
was just going to say, was she the inspiration for Elizabeth Peters'
Yes.
Amelia
Yes.
Peabody books?
Yes.
Oh,
I compare my main character to that main character all the time, so often that I was like, what is going on? So I went and looked it up, and we both used Amelia Edwards. And Elizabeth Peters named her character Amelia after the real life Amelia.
Cool. I'm sorry, Kelly. I think I cut you off.
No. I was just getting enthusiastic about, when you start looking at history in enough detail, these queer people start popping out at you, and they're absolutely there.
No, I mean, I honestly don't know but she never married. There's a definite Boston marriage aura to her life, shall we say. Yes. Yeah. So, I'm going to assume, like I said, it makes me happy. So even if it's a bit fanficky.
Yeah, why not? I mean, fanfic is great. Yeah, go fanfic. I'm a big fan.
Yes, fanfic started it all, really. I mean, that was the original, like, it's not queer and I want it to be, so I'm going to write fanfic.
Yeah.
All right. So since we've talked about favorites, we got to talk about least favorites. So do you have a least favorite queer protagonist or type of protagonist? You can pick a category if you don't want to name anything specific, or if you can't think of anything specific.
Well, we hate it when people get fridged, right? I mean, that's the
Not a fan
ultimate
of fridging.
thing
Yeah.
that we don't like.
I'm not a huge Gay for You fan. I have to say that is a trope I could happily not see ever again. Comes up a lot.
What's fridged? Sorry.
Oh, when a character is basically created to die.
Oh, I see.
Dramatic effect.
Okay. Yes, got it.
Also called red shirting. So yeah, the fridging is from Gail Simone. She was talking about the various female characters who die in comics to motivate the male hero, and that's where the term originally comes from.
Okay.
So she had a blog for a while called Women in Fridges, and she was keeping a count, nifty things like that. So yeah.
Yeah, that's my least favorite type.
Yeah.
So, but it goes back it goes back a long way. Historically, all the old stuff was like that. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be that long an interruption, Gail.
No, go.
So I mean, back when things like what was it, the Deep Sleep, for instance, there was like these gay characters that he has in there that was just they were there just to make their misogynist points and just the points in the social norm, I guess, that they were going through right back then in the 40s and whatnot, and all the way up into even up until the aughts.
The cross-dressing serial killer.
Oh yeah.
Again, apparently, that's what I can't really. Oh, yeah, there.
Well, we all can't get our
Lambs
Silence
really
of the
good.
Lambs fanfic published
Yes.
quite like that, but yeah.
Oh.
there are a lot, like Killing Your Gays, Token Gay, Gay for You. Like they're we could kvetch for a while.
No,
on this.
and it's true. And but the trans serial killer just, and it comes so often. It's so much. I started reading a couple of years ago. I was reading an Isabel Allende book, and it's right there, and I just threw it across the room. It's me so mad.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. The great tragic queer is definitely not, you know, which is it's kind of its own subset of you know, fridged queers and red-shirted queers, is that the tragic queer who must die beautifully and nobly to save the day, inspire the hero, save the kingdom, whatever. But yeah, it's long overdue for a quiet retirement at this point.
Well,
So,
and it's lazy writing, right?
yeah, it is.
I don't know. I had a story that it was a bit difficult to write. It was called In the Space of Nine Lives. It was in Asimov's, like back in 2006, long time ago. And Tom is the main character. Tom is he's a kid. He's being raised on a deep space colony transport ship. And he's actually becoming the next pilot. There's a series of clones that get this transport ships from, you know, one place to another, and it's called In the Space of Nine Lives because it takes 9 pilots to get there. And so through the life of a pilot, you know, from kid to you know, the time when they put the pilot into sleep. Well, now the reason that the Tom is really into this is because he was in love with this other kid named Mark, and in the course of their childhood, Mark ends up dying, and it's that death that sets off Tom's need to help save humanity, because there were things going on with Earth and whatnot. But he gives himself to humanity in order, and that's how he becomes the pilot. So it was tough to do. So, I mean, that kind of character was the, you know, in I guess, you know, shoot 'em ups and mysteries and, you know, things like that annoys the hell out of me. But, and it's interesting that I ended up writing this kind of character.
Yeah, well, we all have to kill people sometimes, right?
That's true. And it is a motivation. I mean, you know, some people are motivated by the loss of a bright star in their life. So,
Did you want to add anything to that, Gail?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, I don't kill anyone usually, so it's.
I often write horror, so I kill a lot of people. But Jen Hale, who's another writer whose work I heartily recommend, has a marvelous column, or rather a piece that she wrote for Tor last year called Not the Only Gay in the Village, in which she talks about how, you know, when you only have the one and you kill the one, it stands out a lot more than if you have a community of people or multiple people, or, you know, at least 2 or 3, and the implication that there are others somewhere in this world. That it's much more realistic, but it's easier to take when you write something that bumps off a character as part of your story, you know. So, and I think with a lot of the early work, you get a lot of stuff where there is only one, and not just queer protagonists. It applies to a lot of other things as well. The disabled, you know, characters of color, et cetera, and there's kind of this tradition in the field where there's just the one in the entire universe, and they die to motivate the hero. And then I think that's where we get into it, rather than, you know, a character dies as part of the story. And in the case of your story, Bob, it sounds like there's a life cycle, there's a set life cycle, so people are going to die, and that, you know, is a little different than this character is here to die, which is a different thing.
Well, the thing in my story is that it has to happen for each Tom as Tom grows up. I mean, you have to create that same exact scenario And they grow up in virtual reality, essentially on board the ship with their friends and whatnot. So he grows up with Mark. Every pilot grows up with Mark and goes through the same thing in order to continue the motivation to keep going forward.
Oh, this is systematic.
It is systematic.
Do this
Yes,
to
it's
them.
serial. Right. Yeah.
Whoa.
That was a, so it was an interesting write.
Yeah, that's interesting. Wow.
There was on the other side, that one, like you're talking about, that's kind of tokenism, isn't it? Would you call
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, when a queer character is there just to be queer and doesn't have anything else going on in their lives, isn't a real character.
Spunky best friend.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's certainly a lot of that out there. That's probably my least favorite. So.
Yeah, somebody was asking about how to avoid that.
Mhm.
And that's just good characterization, right? Like,
Well, it's certainly a part of it. You want to talk a little more about that?
yeah, I mean,
Please.
I love talking about characterization, but I don't have any good answers. But it's hard, right? Especially when you're writing, where you're trying to write tight, to make sure that your secondary characters are fully fleshed out and that they feel like real people. I guess you just have to work at it. They have to have their own motivation to be in the story. They have to be doing their own thing. They can't be there just to help or hinder. Yeah, and I mean, I struggle with this myself, with my own writing, because I like to write super duper tight in the short stories, but yeah, you can't get away with that. Can't get away with sketchy characters.
Do you ever have a problem like writing like queer character, like you have a story and it's like all queer and then you have to remember to put straights in?
There's a
Just
joke
kind of
on
like,
my reader base that's basically assume everybody's queer if I've written it. Just assume it.
The phrase
They
"I
were
can't even write
different.
straight" may have rolled out of my mouth last weekend.
yes. Well, I would
I
say I'm a
recently
queer
wrote
writer,
a horror
even if you
story
can't.
with two male protagonists and kind of got to the end of it and went, oh, did it again.
Well, I would say I'm a queer writer, even if you can't tell.
Another nice way of putting it.
Yes. Well.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, got anything more on this? Anybody else want to talk any more about characterization? Things they like to do?
Say, so I don't write short stories. I write longer works and I write a lot of romances. And I think the idea of adding in additional characters that are queer is an easy shorthand way to make sure that you're not doing tokenism. It's like adding in additional characters of all types. And you can do that with an offhand reference to my aunt who's married to a woman, or however you want to do it, so long as like there's additional rep aside from the one gay character that you're going to kill off or what have you. So that's a quick and dirty way to do it. Yeah, but like complexity of character and making sure that every character has their own motivation. I would also say Hollywood in particular does a lot of desexualization of queer characters. So they'll have a token best friend who is there to be sassy and who's clearly gay, but is never going to actually be depicted with another man or another woman or another person. And so that is also something that you can, fix with a couple of sentences in your book, is give them a flirt with somebody else, or, give those side characters some other interests. And you might end up with a bonus out the back end, which is you'll get, like happens to me constantly, a bunch of fans who like gravitate to that one character that got 8 sentences in your book, and like suddenly you're like, well, I guess I have to write them a story now. You might be motivated to write something else with that character, because people saw enough in that character to really identify with them and then gravitate towards them. And then suddenly you're like, oh yeah, they are really cool. Let's give them a story. You know, so it could have great repercussions if you're really fleshy on all of your side characters.
Okay, cool. Anything more on this topic? Okay. So could we construct a perfect queer character right here on this panel in the next couple of minutes?
Perfect for
It
who?
depends. You have to have this. You have to have the story. The perfect character goes with a perfect fit into the story that they're in, right?
Hmm.
I mean, the character demands the story, and the story demands the character in a way.
And
Would you
usually,
say?
for the problem of the story, you want to choose the worst character to solve the problem, so that you have a story.
Okay.
Yes, be
You
the
want to talk
mean
a little more
writer.
about that?
Oh, what that's just is one of my shorthands, which was told me by Stephen Barnes, great writer Stephen Barnes, who I think Gail knows. That when you get a story idea, you either have the character in mind or the story or the problem. If you have the problem, then the next step to try and figure out what the story is to ask yourself, who is the worst person to solve that problem? And if you have the character, then you ask yourself, what is the worst thing that can happen to that character? So that's just something that I find really helpful in my own mind when I'm thinking about story and character, to try and make sure that I am make sure that my story is strong enough, I hope.
Great tip I got recently also is that, you know, when you're building your characters and figuring out what motivates them and stuff, if you, and this comes out of the romance writing industry, but if you build your character with a void, that like a thing that they are really bad at, or usually like a level of emotional intelligence, like they don't understand what they want about X, or, you know, or they have a history of picking the wrong dude, then you also know what the biggest problem they're going to encounter is, because they need to both fill that void, but also they're going to constantly encounter things that play on the absence of the thing that they're good at, or the thing that they don't have, or the thing that they can't do. So when you're building characters, I always say it's great to build a void. And if you're writing a romance, then the person they are looking for is the person, or the people they are looking for is going to fill that void.
Cool. Bob, did you want to add anything more?
I'm good.
Okay. All right. So we have actually had the less than 10-minute warning. So I think from what I've seen in the chat, it sounds like we've answered most of the questions that I've seen. But if you have something we haven't answered or haven't answered yet, go ahead and put it in the chat, and we'll see how many of those we can get to. And in the meantime, let's go around, and why don't you tell everybody where they can find your work? I'll also mention that there is a Discord channel for this afterwards, and maybe we can stop by for a couple of minutes and, you know, chat there for a little bit. So going around, let's start with you, Gail.
So I'm Gail Carriger, and you can see how it's spelled right there. If you Google Gail Carriger, you can, and whatever platform you like, you will be finding me, or you will just be taken to my website. I would say that the queerest of queer, I write almost everything I write is queer, but the queerest of queer books that I have, and the book of which I am ridiculously proud, is a little science fiction romance called The Fifth Gender, which is about an alien with noodly tentacle hair who comes from a race with 5 different genders and falls in love with a human, much to the human's surprise and confusion. And also you can Google Gail Carriger and gender fluidity, and I have 2 blog posts, one of which it recommends books, fiction books that feature queer characters of all different kinds. and another blog post, which is about all of the research that I did for the fifth gender on gender fluidity in, modern culture, anthropological, all that sort of stuff. So if you Google my name and gender fluidity, 2 blog posts will come up. One of which is for nonfiction, one of which has fiction recommendations. So I would point everybody in those directions for other recommended research and or reading fiction.
Go ahead, Kelly.
KellyRobson.com will have a list of all of my works. A lot of them can be found online. I have a short story collection coming out next year from Subterranean Press. I wish I could show you the cover because it is fabulous.
I bet it's amazing.
Oh, it's gorgeous. I'm just, if you're interested more about the stuff about the characters and the problem, I have an essay on Clark's World. It's called Luke versus Han, An Approach to Characterization.
Cool. Okay. Bob?
Well, I have a website, rrangel.com, and I'm on Twitter at rrangel. I can throw that to the chat thing. Amazon, on all the, Kobo, all those little things you can get. The book, what is it? So my virtual LGBTQ, YA, VR, AI, virtual reality book, novel that came out last year. And then there's In the Space of 9 Lives you can get. There we go. That's how it works. And then there's the remote control little things. They're all on Amazon, all the different platforms. So yeah, so I'm around. Google me. Oh, and there's free stories on the site. Are we, did we just get kicked out?
No, we're still there. That's
okay.
Just a time warning. Bob, do you have anything new coming out? And I mention this because Gail has mentioned something new and Kelly has mentioned something new, and I'm going to mention something new. So. Okay.
Yes, actually, I just sold a story this morning. I'm waiting for the contract that will be, I don't know, sure when, but then I have a short story that's going to be on Fresh Ink. That's fresh.ink next month, and it's a reprint. They do reprints from things, and this is a literary short story, quite queer. And then I have another short story coming out in Gargoyle magazine next year, I think in June. So a few things.
Okay, cool.
And I just finished a 36-story collection that's been taking me 27 years to do, and it's at an editor right now. So we're going to see what happens to that, hopefully in the next year or so. But yeah, I'm really excited about that and kind of going through that postpartum thing.
I know it well.
Yes. So yes, thanks for asking. And you?
Well, you can find a lot of my work at either catherinelundoff.net, which is my website, and Queen of Swords is at queenofswordspress.com. I have a side project where I do a lot of stuff on my research on early LGBTQ science fiction, fantasy, and horror. So I've written a few articles that have appeared in SF Signal and a couple of other places. But most recently, as of 2 weeks ago, I was on the Glitchy Pancakes podcast, which is all about fandom issues and fanish history and science fiction history and issues related to things that are going on. And I did the first round where I talked about what early science fiction, fantasy, and horror looked like in the 1800s and earlier on up to the early 1900s. And I talk about ghost stories and seances and all of that good stuff. So if you look for the Glitchy Pancakes podcast, I was on that 2 weeks ago. And we had so much fun with it. I'm going to go back on and talk about the stuff after that. So we haven't scheduled the date for that, but that should be coming up soon. And the next thing that I'll have out, I'm writing a lot of Sherlockiana this year, which is interesting, but not queer, or no more queer than anything else that I do. And And that's the Blood Moon, which is my second menopausal werewolf novel, will be out real soon now. I'm wrapping it up, and then we'll deal with the rewrites and so forth in a very speedy and expeditious manner, and that'll be out in the world. I have a cover mocked up and everything. My artist is already done with that, so she's like, interior design, give me the book. I'm like, okay, just a little more angst, just a little more angst. So that'll be the next thing that I put out. So, all right. Well, thank
Kelly?
you all very
Kelly,
much. This was a lot of fun. Oh, sorry.
Kelly, did you go?
Yeah, I have a short story collection coming out next year. It's
Oh, that's
called
right.
Alias Space.
Uh-huh.
All right, and we'll at least some of us will be in the Opal Night Room 2, I think. It kind of
Yeah,
flashed
sorry
by.
I can't join you. I have another panel right after this.
Me too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I hope that goes well in that case. Maybe Bob and I will drop by and
Yeah.
we'll chat with you all later on this weekend. So
Yeah.
thank you all very
all.
much. Thanks for
Bye,
being a lovely
bye.
audience.
Thanks very much.
everybody.
That was
Thanks for
terrific.
coming,
Happy
everyone.
Confluence.